Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to another episode of the Scho Bro Show. This is behind the steel curtain editor Dave Schofield coming at you again. It's Tuesday night. It's 9:15. But where else would you rather be as a Steelers fan? I just have to say it. So with me, as always, is my big brother Rich. Oh wait, I messed that one up too.
You messed that up badly.
With me, as always, except when he's not, is my big brother Rich. Rich, how are you?
Well, I'm just going to cry because I didn't get to breathe. No
Steeler football.
Breathing.
Yeah, we're done breathing. We're not allowed to breathe until August now. I know what you mean. Did this weekend feel weird?
It did, but I will say this. After the Steelers bye those 9 weeks, I got to breathe 7 of those 9 weeks. So there was some good there. I spent a lot of time early in the season not breathing.
Yep, you had to hold your breath for a long time, and then it came on strong. But I thought it was kind of a weird weekend. Just because I mentioned this when I was on Let's Ride with Jeff Hartman on Monday. If you didn't catch that, Jeff and I gave our top 5 team needs. It was our 1.0 going into stuff. And I'm going to come back and ask you a question about that shortly. But I mentioned it there. It was weird because when it comes to the podcast and when it comes to the editorially and everything that I'm going on mentally with the Pittsburgh Steelers is off-season, moving on, 2023, growing, all that stuff. And then I turn around and have 6 playoff games that are on the TV all over the weekend. It was just kind of strange. I mean, it was kind of strange last year during the division weekend whenever once the Steelers were out of it. So it was strange, but did you watch the games? I'm going to watch every game I can just because there's soon not going to be any.
I watched a couple. I really didn't watch that many.
Well, here's what's crazy. Okay, well, I didn't really watch much of the one last night. I had it on at times, but it just was not a good game to watch. I had it more on my phone. Sunday, I
fell asleep in last night's game about 5 minutes in.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's similar to how I was on Sunday. Sunday, I was going to get some work done. I went down to the family room. I was going to put together some furniture and watch some football, Dolphins, Bills. Bills jump out to a 17-0 lead. Dolphins start coming back. I sit down for just a little bit. I'm like, I'll just watch it for a little bit. I woke up at halftime and decided to actually lay down on the couch. And when I woke up again, the Bills were in victory formation. So I missed a lot of that one. But, I'm going to take in as much as I can. I just thought I'd ask about that. Rich, the thing I was saying about where Jeff and I talked about team needs, I'm not going to ask you about specific team needs or anything. But in articles that I do, now granted, I know part of it is because I do the mock draft Mondays, things like that. And yes, a lot of people are looking for the draft. How come right now, it seems like every time people mention team needs, they instantly turn to the draft? To me, I'm excited about the draft. I'm excited to learn more about some of the prospects and everything. But I'm still also in a hold your horses mode too.
Because you and I had a similar discussion last year. Because everybody was like, because remember, we kept taking the question, what are they going to do in the draft? What are they going to do in the draft? And we were like, we don't know yet. And people were like, well, don't you have an idea? No, I don't have an idea. Because the first question is, what needs will they address in free agency?
Yeah.
Once that gets rolling.
3 steps. Yeah.
Once that, right. Who do we sign back that
Step
is ours? Who do we sign that's not ours?
Free agency.
Then we could do the draft.
Yes. 2020. Was it 2020? Yeah, it had to be 2020. I'm pretty sure it was 2020 is a good example. I'm doing my math backwards. Yes, it had to be 2020. 2020 is a really good example of this. I was doing that was my first year doing the mock draft Mondays. So I was doing a lot more with mock drafts, and the Steelers didn't have a first round pick. So you're looking at all their stuff and their team needs, and it was all about tight end. And I'm really diving into the tight ends that could be there for the Steelers. I mean, my goodness, there's guys that they're saying they're taking in the second round that were some people projected as 6th round picks. I'm watching part of the Senior Bowl just so I could look at tight ends and everything. Oh man, the Steelers, they don't know what they're going to do with tight end. They've got to address this in the draft. That's going to be their top pick. They sign Eric Ebron and don't even come close to drafting a tight end.
Yeah. Well,
it all changed. It all changed.
Hey, that's all hindsight.
Yeah. But I'm saying it's what?
You were discussing 2020, so that's.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, that's a good one. Zoom. All right, yeah, I kept rolling on. It's all hindsight. Yeah, you're right. That's a good one. So, to me, there's nothing wrong with discussing the draft and still thinking what the Steelers are going to do, and having an idea who's going to be there, when, where, how, why, all that good stuff. No problem with that. But there are some people that are really locked on that the Steelers have to draft this. Now, there was one person, this was on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, now I see what you're doing a little bit more. They're like, I don't want the Steelers to address this position in free agency. I really think they need to invest in the draft specifically. At least they acknowledged that. Yeah, that's what I like. So acknowledge everything could change, because right now you're like, oh, like I had my number one team need. It's inside linebacker for the Steelers. They only got two. And one of them was a 7th-round draft pick this past year that only played 1 year of college linebacker and is very raw, and I think can be something for the Steelers, but I still don't even think it's going to be next year. And the other one is a guy that some people want to already cut because they could save $8 million on his contract, but because they didn't think he was that great. But he played really well early in the season until he got injured and then just tried to tough it out the rest of the year, according to reports. But other than that's all they have. So to me, inside linebacker is a really big team need. But that's also not what I'm calling for them to draft really high. I'm thinking they're going to address that one of the other two ways.
Very, very possible.
Yeah.
Again, the way I look at it is right now your look at the draft is great, big, and broad. Your look at the draft has to be really wide vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is you go through these other two pieces, and that helps focus the draft down a little more.
Yes.
So, they all play off of each other. Now, the exciting thing to look at, because right now it's hard to talk about, free agency till it hits. And even when it hits, you just never know how that's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
The draft is has a little more predictability within it, which is why I understand why people like to go and look at that now. But just understand that you need to be looking at something, as my hands are clear out of my screen, this big now that we're going to focus down to this big by the time we actually get to the draft.
Yeah, exactly. And something that could be a huge need. Think about here. We're going to talk a little bit of news, then we're really going to get into some good stuff with quarterbacks. And we'll even talk about the draft with that as well. But if you look at last year, even 2 weeks before the draft, so many people were mocking for the Steelers. They had to draft a safety because the Steelers were still missing a starting safety. Oh, no, what are they going to do? And then what do they do the week of the draft? They signed Terrell Edmonds.
Yes.
What do they do? Literally, I think it was the day after the draft or the Saturday of the draft, it might have even leaked out. They signed DeMonte KZ.
Right.
So you ultimately really want to fill those holes through free agency and then build on what you have through the draft. That's really a good way of doing it. We're going to talk about some news here once we've got $5 from Wes. How's it going, Wes? Yep. Okay, $5 in the tip jar. Thank you very much. He says, in my opinion, we need an elite vet wide receiver. We are going to have a lot of space in theory. Is there any chance at all we make a play for DeAndre Hopkins? I don't know that they have to have a vet because, I mean, I guess the closest thing you have to that is Deontay Johnson. I'm not going to argue against anyone that thinks that they need it. I'm not. I just don't know that they absolutely have to do it that way. If you think that's important, I think you have a very valid point. DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know. Now you talk about a lot of cap space in theory. Right now it is theory because the Steelers don't have cap space. Everyone's like, well, wait a second. Didn't they have like 16 million or something a little bit ago? They didn't have 51 players on their roster.
Right.
The Steelers sucked up over $10 million by signing reserve contracts because they just simply didn't have enough players. the Steelers right now, I mean, if you go to over the cap right now for 2023, the Steelers cap space is listed at 1.6 million. That's not a lot. Now you go to somewhere like Spot Rack, theirs might even be negative. I haven't looked there recently. I've been paying attention to that one because they've been counting Stephon Tuitt twice. They put him on the active roster and they have him in dead money. So they're counting his money twice, which doesn't make sense. There's just a lot of up in the air, but could they potentially, have a lot more than this? Yes. They absolutely could, because like a William Jackson III. Right now, his contract, they don't have it. They changed the numbers on here on over the cap, which is, I find kind of interesting. It was 12.75 million. They don't have that exactly that anymore. They have it as 12.176471. It's because of bonuses and stuff based from his previous contract. But these are all things that could be, you could save a chunk of change there if you're not going to bring him back. I already mentioned someone like a Miles Jack, $8 million. You could mention someone else like a Mitch Trubisky, $8 million. So in theory, I like what Wes was saying in theory, because that in theory is assuming that you're not going to keep everybody that's on your roster right now, that you are going to have to dump some of these contracts of people that you just don't want to pay that much money to. So that's in theory. So Rich, now to answer his ultimate question, DeAndre Hopkins. He's still under contract, right? It would have to be a trade. Am I right? I'll check that while you answer to let you know for sure.
But in terms of that, the question really comes down to, does the organization feel they need somebody like that?
Yeah. And he's under contract through 2024.
Okay.
So it would have to be a trade.
They would have to figure out, do they need somebody like that, or do they have another idea? Honestly, I don't know if you need, my opinion, we have our soon to be superstar wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
He wears number 14.
Yeah.
And just does, it's just George Pickens doing George Pickens things out there, So I don't know if you absolutely have the need to go after somebody like Hopkins, but if the organization feels that it's something they could use and they could do it, I'm going to trust the organization to figure out what they feel they need to add in each room.
Yeah. Well, and let's just share this quickly. The base salary for 2023, the base salary for DeAndre Hopkins for 2023, $19.45 million. So that's, his cap hit for Arizona this year was going to be $30 million because of, the prorated bonus in there.
Right.
So if you trade for him and you're just taking on his base salary, $19.45 million for 2023. That's finding an awful lot of cap space and using it all in one spot. So that's one concern. Two, do you want to invest all that money and all that draft capital into one player at one position?
For 1 year.
For 2 years. It's 2 years. Yeah, he has 2 years left. And the next year is $14.915 million. So you get a bit of a discount in the last year. But that just seems like an awful lot for one. That's just me. I'm not saying that it's not, it's not out of the question. So, all right, real quick. The Steelers did sign a player today. They signed one of their own. They signed back wide receiver Anthony Miller, and they did it. It's so funny. I was working on my article of exit interviews. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's behindthesteelcurtain.com. In the afternoon, I have an exit interview basically every day until I run out of players. It's 2 players each day talking about what they did last year, what's their contract status moving forward, some stats they had for the year, and some ideas behind them. And today was George Pickens and Miles Boykin. Well, George Pickens, which you already mentioned, I talked about, man, that guy can really catch the ball. if he could get better at his route running, my goodness, the sky is the limit for him. So that's something something to work on in the offseason. Running crisper routes, things of that nature. But for Miles Boykin, I was like, is he the only wide receiver that's a free agent? So I was looking down the Steelers roster. I looked at their list of free agents. I looked at their injured reserve, and I'm like, I don't see Anthony Miller on either list. He was injured this year. He wasn't under contract, but he wasn't listed as being a free agent. I was diving into all this stuff. I was going to say, well, is it something with the contract tolls? No, he's got to be on PUP in order for that to happen, is my understanding. And he was just on IR for the season. I was like, what's going on with him? I was typing in our Slack channel for our staff a question about Anthony Miller, if anyone knows what the deal is, when Jeff Hartman put in the breaking news channel that he signed with the Steelers for next year. So I was wondering what was up. So I got my answer before I even asked the question. But he's back. He was looking real good. Did you see him at you were there the second day, right? So he was still around and healthy when you were there, right? If you can remember.
Yes.
I don't know if you happened to notice him or not.
No, not really, but it was a rough
there was a lot of talk of him in oh, that's right. There was a lot of talk about him during training camp, the connection with Mitch Trubisky and everything else, and that he was looking, like the guy that caught 7 touchdowns and was a second-round draft pick his rookie year. So that's someone that the Steelers bring back, which is likely on the cheap. I don't think there's any – I don't know that there's any report on what his contract is yet, but I assume it's basically probably going to be for around the minimum. And it's so there's that one. Then there's the rumors. Okay. The rumors that the Steelers, moving on from any coaches is frozen. This came from Mark Cabali of The Athletic, that's not going to happen anytime soon because Coach Tomlin is dealing with a personal issue. And is doing some of the exit interviews virtually right now. So we don't know what that personal issue is, but that could change any coaching decisions that they have. It could push that back. And then there's also the rumor that that the Buccaneers are going to let go Byron Leftwich as their offensive coordinator, and 2, that the Steelers are interested. Now, these are rumors. These are merely rumors floating out around in Steelers Twitterverse and all that good stuff. Rich, any thoughts on that?
No. Because they're rumors.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make me say something about it, say, well, you could see Leftwich, he spent some time here in Pittsburgh.
2 years ago, I loved him. 2 years ago, I loved him. He had a rough year. And honestly, if you look back at stuff, what really struggles with Leftwich is the run game.
Actually, if you look at the stats from last night, it's not the fact that the running backs can't run the ball, it's that they don't hand it off.
Yeah. I mean,
they just don't give them the carries.
Yeah.
We let, old man Brady throw the ball 60 some odd times last night.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to think, where did that report?
Seven attempts for 41 yards, right? We're talking close to 6 yards an attempt.
Yeah. But only
you
7
just didn't give him the ball more.
But they also weren't, how many extra points can a team miss in one game? But I mean, they were down a lot, so that also didn't help. I don't know if it was that sometimes people have often said, wise NFL people have often said, and I might even specifically quote, so maybe I take back the word wise. I heard Colin Cowherd say before. So I got to take back the word wise. Okay. I got to take back the word wise.
You are, with all due respect, dumb.
Yeah, that's what I am for using that word there. Okay, but anyway, I've heard Colin Cowherd say this before. Beware the coordinator of the head coach that's the specialist on the same side of the ball. Beware of the offensive coordinator underneath an offensive-minded coach. Beware the defensive coordinator under a defensive-minded coach. when it comes to looking at those positions. And, Leftwich with Arians was really good, but didn't really work this past year very much. My concern is, and this is one thing, people might not like Matt Canada, but Jeffrey and I have an article coming out for our Vertex this week. What he does bring is a good run, is a good philosophy behind the running attack. Yeah. If you want to say what's his best attributes, Matt Canada some different people were breaking it down of the options, but when you're talking about, not the jet sweeps, but all the different options that they could run between, handing it off, the sweep, the counter, and all this various stuff, some really good creative run stuff. And honestly, that's what this. What's that?
Jeffrey or Kevin? One of them did some film and they showed one set where they had 3 different ways, 3 different players they could hand the ball to.
Yeah. And that's honestly, that really helped the Steelers' run game this year in the second half. And the Steelers' ability to run the ball really helped them dictate what they wanted to do in games with controlling the clock, minimal possessions, help have your defense, not asking your rookie quarterback to have to go out and win every game with his arm, although he showed, he could just put 2 games in a row, went down and did it. So I don't want to diminish that, but that was really nice. I don't want the run game to suffer under something else. I'm not saying that's a good reason to keep back in. One of the things we would bounce around in our Slack channel was, if the Steelers are going to insist on keeping Matt Canada, hiring a specific passing game coordinator, because
not a bad idea.
How many times Kevin brought up that said their route combinations are more simplistic than what we run in high school.
Yeah. And how many times did we see 4 curls?
Yeah, and just various different things. And if they do it with a whole new coordinator, that's I understand that as well. But my biggest concern right now is, if Byron Leftwich is coming in and really struggling to have an offense that features the run game, then that's going in the opposite direction of what the Steelers are doing right now. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I was thinking maybe Filipponi was the one who reported that. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But anyway, Rich, we're going to go ahead and take our break now that we've covered the news, because I don't want to have to stop again, because I'm going to set up what it is that we're talking about and what we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks. And that is this show for Behind the Steel Curtain. We are kind of the transition show each week. Monday, you would have the hangover talking about the previous game. We were the transition show. We would talk about the last game. We would talk about the next game. Sometimes we talked more about the last game than we did the first. Occasionally we talked about the next game as much as we did the last game. Yeah. It would depend. But we would kind of transition from looking at last week, and we'd end up looking at scores for the next week. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a similar approach with this show in the next few weeks. And that is, we're going to look back at some things from the season and then look forward of how it needs to be going into 2023. We're going to do that some with not necessarily the players, but the philosophy behind the quarterback position, what they did last year, what they're moving next year. That's what we're going to talk about in the second half. So if you're here with us on YouTube or Facebook, we're just going to be a couple seconds, and on the audio side, stick around for these messages. And we are back, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, and let's dive into this. We're going to look back a little bit here at the 2022 season. I almost messed up and said 2020 season. At the quarterback position and the philosophy and everything that the Steelers had going into it. So when we go back to this time last year, Rich, what were the Steelers doing? I mean, and everything. How did it all play out? We knew Ben was gone. We knew Ben was going. And you're like, now what?
Yeah, that's what we were. We were like, now what? We have currently Mason Rudolph. What else is we going to do?
Well,
it's not just going to be the Mason Rudolph show necessarily.
Yeah, and I brought up something where I looked back at the articles that I was writing approximately 1 year ago when the Steelers season ended and everything to just kind of jog my memory of how we rolled into the offseason. And unfortunately, I saw back and say, oh, look, the Steelers are planning on offering Dwayne Haskins the restricted free agent tender, which they did. And then even through free agency, he was there, met up with them at Trubisky's. The tragedy happened. That was taken out of the equation. So the Steelers basically had two guys, but you knew they were going to have two more. You knew they were going to have two more. And going into free agency, you kind of got to think back and remember that Mitch Trubisky was considered pretty much the hottest commodity at quarterback. Now we get to have our 2020 vision. Now we get to have the hindsight. Should the Steelers, spend a little bit less money and gone the route of a Jacoby Brissett who played under Matt Canada? Or maybe he played under Matt Canada and had no desire to come to the Steelers. For all we know. So the Steelers went the free agent route. And from that time, Mitch Trubisky, I thought perhaps when the Steelers went into training camp, they might have said, okay, we're going to start off with Mason Rudolph one, just simply because he was the guy with the most experience with the black and gold. They didn't do it. I was kind of surprised because it just seemed like a Steeler thing to do. I'm not saying it's what they should have done, but they didn't do it. It was Trubisky from day one. What's your thoughts on how the Steelers did that with it being Trubisky from day one?
I wasn't a huge fan of it, and a lot of fans weren't either. And because I still see talk going on about it that, there was never truly a quarterback competition in camp like it said there was going to be. It was decided long before camp ever got here that the starter week one would be Mitch Trubisky. Mm-hmm. There was no open competition for it. We said there was. Yeah, the Steelers said there was. Coach Tom said there was. There was not.
I don't know that did he call it an open competition? I'm trying to remember his terminology.
He said they were all going to have the chance.
An opportunity.
Yes.
Him saying they would all have an opportunity, so many people took and ran with it that everyone had an even shot. And that didn't necessarily mean that's what they meant. Honestly, either one, someone was going to have to blow the doors off, or two, somebody was going to really have to stink it up. And honestly, neither happened. Right. Some people want to talk about Kenny Pickett in the preseason and how great he did, but did he really do that much better than any of the other quarterbacks? I mean, breaking down the numbers, he had one more touchdown than each of the other two. Trubisky had more yards on fewer pass attempts. There wasn't a huge separation there. So I can understand why things wouldn't have changed. But honestly, if anyone got shafted, it was more Mason Rudolph. He never really got an opportunity to go up against any kind of real competition. He was delegated to two or three the whole time.
Yeah, he was, and that was tough.
Yeah. Yep. But, hey, we got $4.99 from DQ Strong with no words in it in the live chat. Thank you for the tip. I will look to try to find your next comment that you have coming up, and I'll bring it up in case something went wrong with that. So DQ Strong, we'll keep an eye out for you. Yeah, and I'd gone on record saying the way I expected the Steelers to slow play Kenny Pickett, and I even expected a little bit more.
I had no problem with the way things went with Kenny Pickett.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just put it this way: you probably, Mason Rudolph probably can't wait to get out of town.
Mm-hmm.
He probably can't.
That's pretty much what I said when it was him and Kenny Pickett on Monday's edition of Exit Interviews.
Yeah.
if Mason Rudolph wants to be, I mean, he should at least be aspiring to be a backup quarterback that's in uniform and ready to step on the field at any moment. And he got that for all of one game this past season.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think I got DQ Strong here.
Okay.
DQ Strong said, going back to the convo about the run game, it's not enough to have a good run game. You score big points with the pass. But as the Steelers proved over the second half of the season, you don't have to score big points. If you minimize your possession. You got to listen to Jeffrey Benedict's cutting room. I didn't get to listen to it all yet, so I don't have it all. To his cutting room floor, because it's something that he's been talking about for a while, is that you don't have to have high scoring games if both teams are only possessing the ball 7 or 8 times a game.
Yeah.
If there's not a lot of possessions because you're controlling the ball with the run, then you don't have to put up big points. Yes, throwing the ball puts up big points. But as you can see, and you're like, well, look at the playoffs with it. No, look at what the Steelers did over the last 9 weeks. They didn't have to put up big points to win games. They played good defense, and they minimized the possessions, and they ran the ball.
Yep.
And their quarterback came through when he had to.
Minimize the possessions, and don't give up a ton of points.
Don't give up a ton and take care of the ball.
But one of the ways is to not give up a ton of points is don't let the other team have the ball as many times, because then there's less chance for them to put up points.
And it was the Steelers' philosophy last year, and they couldn't do it. Like playing someone like a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, the best defense against them is having them stand on the sideline while your offense is on the field.
That's right.
That's the best defense against them. They can't hurt you standing on the sideline.
That's right. Make them throw tablets.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you there. So here we go. Back to what we were saying about with the quarterback. So I thought the way the Steelers were going to do it was, you put Kenny Pickett as the third guy on the depth chart for the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. That way, if there's an injury, he's not coming in taking his first snaps early doing that. He could sit back and really take in the NFL game and the difference of a regular season NFL game versus preseason NFL games, and just kind of gain some knowledge there. Then he moves up to QB2 and then moves up to QB1. That's what I expected for them to do with him this season. It happened a little bit faster. I don't even know if that's how Tomlin wanted it. You had the clerical error. You had the coming in at halftime the week 4. It ended up being what it was. And honestly, I wouldn't change any of it, simply because if you read my What If article, a lot of bad things could have also happened too if Kenny Pickett came in sooner or later. So the way it played out is the way it played out.
Yeah. The really, now that the Steelers season is over, you just have to ask yourself the one question. Thinking over those last few games especially, am I happy with Kenny Pickett's progression in the direction things are going in the quarterback, at the quarterback position?
Yeah.
And I have to say, yes.
I'm not saying yes. I'm like, heck yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Did he play perfect throughout those games? No. But man, he came through when he needed to. He took care of the ball. He played with confidence. He played, so much you can say about it. Go ahead.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh,
I was listening to you.
Oh, I felt like you had more to say, and I was just throwing in an aside. But
oh no, yeah. You're just used to interrupting me and then having to go back and let me talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I interrupted you, and I was letting you go back and talk. See, and that's why I have to interrupt you, because you don't have anything else good to say anyway.
That's right.
So,
once you start talking, my brain just goes, okay, we're going to the next topic.
So that's how the quarterback position played out. They went with 2 in the draft. Now, some people still talk about the wasted pick of Chris Oladokun. I have an article that I've been it's one of those that I have that I can do it at any time if I didn't have anything else to do. He was an insurance policy that they never had to cash. Not one quarterback missed one snap of training camp, because if somebody misses a snap, they needed someone else to be there and ready. And that's what they had. And it just so happened that, so many times you think it's a mistake to buy insurance when you never have to cash it in.
Yeah.
But,
that's what he was.
You're like, oh, man, I bought the extended warranty and everything was fine,
All you needed was somebody with a sore shoulder for a couple days, with an ice bag on it, and everybody's like, oh, good thing we had him here. And
he's stepping right in. So, and think about that. How many years had it been where the Steelers didn't have a quarterback missing time in training camp? It was by design with one BTR. So that's why it was the whole idea of having 4. So the Steelers, they went 2 in the draft. Some people thought maybe they could have gone undrafted free agent. They didn't. I found it interesting that they went with Oladokun when it could have been he's real purdy over there, because technically he was still there too. But 6 of 1 at the time is what you look at, is that it really could have been either way. But man, congratulations to Brock Purdy coming out and getting the job done.
Well, as Sherry says,
Purdy
was an insurance policy. Look at him now. They had to cash in their insurance policy.
Look at that poor team, and you're like, how in the world are they winning games? They lose Lance, they lose Garoppolo, and they're still winning.
First of all, there's a lot of talent on that team.
They got a good roster. he's put in a pretty good situation.
Yes, he's put in a good. Even though BTR was a first round draft pick, getting thrown in and then going undefeated in the regular season his rookie year,
he was put in a good situation. Yeah.
So
Yep. So but that's right, Sherry. He was an insurance policy. So the Steelers, they didn't have to cash theirs in. The 49ers, they had to cash theirs in, and they're good thing they had it, or else they'd be in even more trouble. Just think, they could have picked up Baker Mayfield instead. Now, he had his moments in LA as well, but still, we're not going into there.
Yeah.
Whew, yeah, and that's crazy that the 49ers could have traded up 2 years ago for a quarterback that now they might not have a need for. Because if Purdy's the guy, then you don't really need Lance. That'll be interesting to see how that played out. But you know what? That's not the Steelers. But it's interesting. We're talking quarterback, so it's interesting stuff. So now here we got the Steelers with this year. The Steelers currently have 2 quarterbacks on their roster. They have, whether you want to call him the franchise or not yet, they have QB1. We'll definitely call him that. Yep. Kenny QB1. Pickett. And you have Mitch Trubisky under contract for 1 more season. Mason Rudolph is a free agent. So what are the Steelers doing at the quarterback? We don't have to worry about Kenny Pickett. He's here. He's the starter. Everything else is about the rest of the room. You already mentioned Mason Rudolph. I don't know if we need to say much about this. Mason Rudolph, it's like, I don't even know that the Steelers have to say, well, Mason, are you interested? I don't even think they'd finish the sentence. I think the answer is going to be no.
No.
Yeah. So Mason, any chance you want it? No. You want to reconsider? No. They basically burned that bridge and buried it with how little of an opportunity was given last year. But also you have to remember, he was their most known commodity coming in. They knew more what they had with him. But woulda, coulda, shoulda. Don't know if they woulda or they coulda, but they sure didn't. Okay. So this year, how do you see the Mitch Trubisky thing playing out now?
Oh, see, there's different things that could happen now. Let's see. What's Mitch on the books for next year?
The exact amount on the books, I know it's an $8 million base salary. Give me just a second and I'll have it here. Yeah, $8 million base salary. His prorated bonus is $2.625 million, meaning that's from his signing bonus from this past year. So right now on the cap, he counts 10.625, but 2.625 million of that is going to stick no matter what. So it's the difference of the $8 million. That's a lot for a backup quarterback.
Sure
Some people
is.
say it's not much, but it's not much when you add up your top two quarterbacks together.
Correct.
But do you really want to be paid that much to your backup when you could say, hey, we've got a quarterback on a rookie deal. Let's invest in other places and get the best team around him that we can.
Well, you know, Mason Rudolph's base salary this past year was just over 5 to be a QB3.
Yeah.
To sit.
See, he's a different kind of insurance policy that'll be in that article as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you know, that's what you got to figure out is it comes down to probably Coach Tomlin and Omar Khan sitting down and saying, okay, this is what we have tied up in quarterback. Are we okay with that number? Okay. If we're not okay with the number, then it's okay. Well, we got to look at Trubisky. What do we do with it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Jeff Hartman said something to me tonight. Our kids got together to do a kids escape room that they just at the local library. They had a blast. So I was talking with Jeff and we were saying about what we were going to talk about on the show tonight. And he said something. I got to give him credit for it because I'm pretty sure you might hear this from Jeff tomorrow on Let's Ride. Honestly, because he might have been saying the same thing there, and that is, if Mitch Trubisky sits back next year to be a backup quarterback with the Steelers, he is probably relegated to being a backup for the rest of his career, wherever he goes.
Yep, probably.
So what he ultimately has to decide is, am I just going to say, hey, I want to be one of these guys that can make a pretty good living as a backup quarterback in the NFL, or do I want to take my one more chance as a starter, knowing that it could mean that people may not even want me as a backup ever again? That's what he has to make the decision of. And I think if Mitch Trubisky tells the Steelers he would like to move on to have a chance to start somewhere else, that they will let him go. I don't think it has to be a trade or anything like that. I think if Trubisky volunteers, not hostages, if Trubisky would like to go to have an opportunity to start somewhere else, I think they would oblige, because it would also make the right financial decision.
Right. So that would add what, around $6 million to the Steelers would have
8. It adds the 8.
Right?
Yeah, it brings the 8 right back. So
the 8 comes back, but how about the dead?
Well, no, the dead's already counting.
Oh, that's right.
Now,
The dead's already
he's counting 10.
Right. Okay,
he's counting 10. So you
right.
He's still counting the 2, and then and then you gain the 8. So yeah,
gotcha.
So that's yeah.
Well,
just a reminder of how that works right now.
If that were happen, we could always go out and sign free agent find a free agent that we could bring in as a backup. Someone like, I don't know, Tom Brady.
I knew you were going to go there.
Maybe I don't know, Lamar Jackson.
There's been other people in the comments saying that too. Hey, Lamar might be available.
Hey, and why not? We could always bring in Joe Flacco.
I knew that was coming. Remember, you need an elite backup. You got to have an elite backup. Now, so bottom line is, how do you think they're going to? I think what happens with Trubisky ultimately will shape this a lot. And I don't think the Steelers are going to just flat up cut Trubisky, but I think they're going to have a serious conversation, and maybe he'll say he wants to go, and then that allows them to do it amicably if they want that $8 million. So what do they do? What do they do if that's the case?
What if Trubisky goes?
Yeah. How do they shape their quarterback room for going into 2023?
I would imagine that you would see them pick up a free agent.
I think that would. I think
someone
if
that they could get,
Trubisky's gone, I think you have to. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd consider it probably a middle of the road guy,
Yeah.
although, you got a guy out there like Jacoby Brissett. He's out there and he's an unrestricted free agent.
Did he only sign 1-year deal? Gotta look at that.
Yeah. I'm looking at the current. I'm looking at a list of current
good.
free agents at the end of the season, and he's
Yeah.
on there. You've got other guys like I don't know. Well, you really want to get crazy. Hey, just a guy that would serve as a backup, but it has had some time starting in the league. Gardner Minshew,
Yeah.
is
that.
Is a free agent.
You want to ultimately you're signing a guy that knows they're a backup. You're not signing a backup that's aspiring to break in to be the starter.
Right.
But you're also, signing a guy that says, hey, if something happens to Kenny Pickett, you're going to show everybody what you can do because you're going to be the next guy.
Yeah. And believe it or not, this list has a lot of guys on it that are, number 2 guys, I mean, gee whiz, you really want to get to it, Teddy Bridgewater, Miami, although I'm sure he's waiting to see what goes on with Tua, but technically he's the second guy, what is a guy like that potentially looking for? Case Keenum.
That's Brian's favorite backup of all time.
Guys that really are backups.
Yeah.
But what do you,
honestly, what's crazy is a good one out there would be Mason Rudolph. Honestly,
correct.
But I don't think that's going to fit anymore because of the history.
No, I don't.
And as people say in the live chat, they're saying, "Don't forget Josh Dobbs." I don't know if Josh Dobbs wants to come back to Pitt. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I don't know.
Right. It's if for some reason it's not Mitchell Trubisky, there are some guys out there that are available that the Steelers could get that aren't going to wow you or excite you. But honestly, we're not looking for that this year because we know who the QB1 is supposed to be going into next year.
Yeah. So one last question before we get to our big question.
Okay.
Steelers quarterback draft.
Potentially.
Do you look to draft a quote unquote backup quarterback in the draft? And if so, possibly, where do you look to do it? With the reminder that the Steelers do not have a 5th or a 6th round pick.
Yeah, which sucks because I was going to say sometime round 5 or
they have 2 7s, but they don't have a 5 or a 6.
Yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I'm not sure. Not sure that they'll look and do that. But this is one of those where I'm going to trust that the Steelers are looking at all these things, will do what they need to do through the dealing with their own players, dealing with free agency to then make decisions about how they're going to face their draft.
Yes, it ultimately is going to shape up there. And this year above any, I think the Steelers would be fine. They could find a quality undrafted free agent for their 4th quarterback simply because they didn't draft one this year. It's hard to draft one and then go out and find another one that they know that the focus is going to be so much on that one as the rookie. I mean, because think about it, they're going to get all the rookie mini camp snaps and all that. You're going to have a rookie quarterback in rookie minicamp no matter what. So whether it's because you drafted one late or you signed one as an undrafted free agent or you have one merely as a tryout player, you're going to have someone that's there for rookie minicamp. So So here's the big question as we're getting late in the show. We talked an awful lot about stuff going on with things before we get rolled into this topic. So we didn't get to just open it up to questions to everybody like we're hoping to get to more in the off season. But here's the big question. And for those of you that don't remember how this works, I ask Rich a question. Normally during the regular season, it's what's the score going to be this weekend? But I'll ask the question. He'll answer it. And in this case, because it's not the score, I'll answer it. We'll put the question in the live chat, and then I'll bring up your all's answer. This is a multiple choice question. And it's basic, so you're going to answer one of the three. And if you want to give a big, long explanation in the live chat, that's fine, but I'm not bringing it up. I'm only bringing up the ones that have the answers.
Well, you can bring it up, but you just give the one-word answer and then move on.
If it says it at the beginning, I'll bring it up and just say that. If it's a whole long explanation to get there, I won't even see it. So here's the question, Rich, so everyone else can be thinking up. You've got three options. And I'll tell you the words that everyone's going to type in. The Steelers QB2 for 2023 is coming to the Steelers by option one, roster, meaning they're on the roster right now, meaning Mitch Trubisky. 2, free agency, or 3, draft. Don't do the numbers. Just type. Your options are roster, free agency, draft. Rich, where do you think the backup quarterback's coming from?
Free agency.
You know what? I agree. And people were already jumping the gun. What you said. I'm not paying attention to you. Okay. You all know better than this. These are people who know better.
People that are here.
Oh my goodness! These are people that know.
This is terrible.
You know, you're lucky, and there's too many of you. I mean, what was it last week or the week before? We had it perfect where nobody jumped. I used to put you in a 5-minute timeout where you couldn't even answer. Just to do it. So here you go.
The famous words of Charles Barkley. That's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's terrible. So there you go. Now we've got it coming. So people that already have it. George Teston, he says is coming in free agency. Thomas Riley says it's coming on the roster, already on the roster. BF Bud says it's already on the roster. Okay. Richard Adamson says it's coming in free agency. Brian Brown says free agency. Claude Bishop says free agency. Drunk Turkey Show, okay, says free agency. Okay. Blair, is that hot? I'm going to say hot. Says free agency. Reginald Rivers says coming through the draft. Okay. Someone did ask the question of what happened to the 4th-string quarterback last year. Oh, he's on the Kansas City's practice squad. In case you're wondering. Okay. Yeah. James Tresvant says it's on the roster now. So we're getting some different answers. George OTJ says free agency. Great 103 says free agency. Sherry Richards says it was a false start on the live chat. False start. You know what? Maybe I should have brought up the one right before the question because they're letting tackles have a little bit of an extra step. That's a good one, Sherry. I had to bring that up. Okay. Todd Faraday says, Fiery. There's no T in there. I keep putting a T in that name. Yep. Sorry, Todd. He says free agency. Huh?
Fiery.
There we go. All right. Steel Dog 88 says he's on the roster now. Joseph Donovan says free agency. Harvey Stone says free agency. And Sherry Richards gives us her answer of free agency as well. As more of them pile in, if you jump the gun, it's okay. Put your answer in again, and I'll bring it up. Just don't miss there.
Don't cheat the gun on it.
Iman Singh wants to know if trade was a possibility. If you insist, I'll say it's okay. I'm saying that's the least likely, just because I don't know if this is going to trade for a quarterback because I don't think they want to give up any. I don't think they want to give up any. Who wants to give up capital for a backup quarterback? They wouldn't even give up capital last year for a starter. So yeah, that's why I mean you can think it. I just don't know that'll happen there. Gregory Waller says free agency as well. So if you said draft, the most was free agency, and I would you say the second most was on the roster already? Probably.
Yeah. If you ask me, math nerd. Go numbers wise. If you had me break it down right now, I'd say you got a 50% chance it's in free agency, 40% chance it's on the roster right now, and 10% chance that it's a draft pick.
That would be my numbers as well. When you said you were doing numbers, I popped them into my head. I'm going 50, 40, 10.
Yes. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if any more come up here as we're closing up, hey, make sure that you're still here. We're still here. We're going to be here all off season. There might be a weekend there.
There's no off season.
There's no off season for BTSC.
It's just not during
it's just
game
no football's
season.
being played. But there's always lots going on. Like, you know what? It pained me today when the realization was that my son's spring break is the same week as the start of free agency. I'm like, the biggest breaking news time of the entire NFL year. And that's when I'm supposed to be going on vacation. So we got to see how that works. But hey, we're going to be here. Your other podcasts are going to be here. I didn't get to because I fell asleep and got behind of stuff on Sundays. I still need to go back and check out the homies. That is the guys from the We Run the North. They're doing the Sunday show. Did you check that out at all, Rich?
I just a couple minutes on Sunday. I just happened to come by and I wanted to at least turn it on and see what it was about. So I spent, I don't know, just 2 or 3 minutes, but I'm going to get back and listen to it as well. I actually clicked on it live while they were actually live.
That's because the show We Run the North had been, it was last off season, it was on YouTube. Then it moved to audio only during the season. Oh man, DQ Strong goes with the $1.99 tip to say free agency. Man, well, you know what? We appreciate the tip. Okay. But when they transition back, that's what they're calling it now. That's going to be your Sunday show. We're still looking at probably after games are done at some point. We'll get back to maybe doing the Q&A. We're still making some of our off-season decisions with stuff if the Q&A will return, because I know a lot of people have been asking about it. But otherwise, our things are staying the same. There might be one change in there based on someone's availability for a show, but otherwise, tomorrow night, it's still, I like how last week for Know Your Enemy, they brought on Nick Faribault to talk about the Steelers. That's their enemy now going forward, is that, don't be your own worst enemy with that. So I like how they, they're still coming. The preview will be here Thursday night. All the shows that you have and our audio only shows. The only thing that you're going to be missing in the off season is the Mike Tomlin press conference recaps, either by myself or Brian Anthony Davis, because there are no press conferences, and last minute thoughts. Other than that, we're going to have the same shows. Not the same thing, but the same lineup coming at you, breaking down all these things going into the off season. So we'll have plenty of content for you. For those of you that are here to take it all in. And of course, the website, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, it's your one-stop shop for all these Pittsburgh Steelers. Rich, anything else you want to say here to close us out here tonight?
All right, close out here tonight. Hey, still sad the Steelers aren't still playing football, as I'm sure most everybody out there is. But that doesn't mean that we have to stop thinking about our Steelers. I almost never stop thinking about the Steelers. There's always something to talk about with the team, moves they can make, things they can do. So really, I'm already kicked it into gear for getting things ready for next season. Thinking about the Steelers. It's what I do. I'll be back here doing it again next week. Can't wait.